Hey everyone, Teamudf here. This is gonna be one of those videos where Teamudf just talks. So, yeah, here's music. Okay, so, maybe like 2.5 of you will remember that on September 17th, 2016, I posted a video talking about my Yu-Gi-Oh fanfiction from way back on September 17, 2006. That particular series ran for 200 episodes and exactly 3 years. I've got the list of all the episodes and when they were posted. And yeah, the series just so happened to last exactly 3 years on Pojo. So I guess this will be considered the celebration, the 10-year celebration of the end of Yu-Gi-Oh! Battlezone. And I don't know. I don't have really a list of topics or any organization to my thoughts here or anything, so I might just talk about random nonsense. Or we'll maybe think about it or whatever, and maybe relate it to Dokailo. Because, like, you know, again, for like the 2.5 of you aware, old Team UDF is making his own card game. Air quotes. He's trying. It's been taking a long time. Actually, it's pretty much been in development since the 2016 video announcing the 10-year celebration of the start of Battlezone. But hey, you know, time passes in very weird ways, I guess. You know, it doesn't feel like 10 years ago I would have been sitting down, smashing away at the keyboard, thinking about, oh god, let's see, well, some of the Season 9 episodes, I guess. These were all pretty much done at the last minute. I used to have a system where I would be like 10 episodes ahead at any given time. So like if I was posting episode 23, I would be writing episode 33 or something. And this was the same type of approach I'd hoped to take with my own card game story. You know, because I'm removing basically all the Yu-Gi-Oh references. I'm removing all the IRL references. Because Yu-Gi-Oh! Battlezone was originally just meant to be a goofy self-insert fanfiction. Like, we were just gonna grab a bunch of us that we knew who played Yu-Gi-Oh! We were just gonna throw ourselves in a story. And it was just gonna be it was basically gonna be an action comedy. And as time passed, it gained a very real plot. And that real plot progressively got darker and darker. And then I just ended up with the Battlezone that they all knew and loved back then. It was a very popular fanfiction. It won Fanfic of the Year 2008 or whenever the flid that was, so I guess it had to count for something, you know, with a sample size of like 30 Pojoians or something, you know? So I'm not bragging in case you didn't pick up on the sarcasm. But yeah. Yeah, it was originally just a self-insert action comedy. Like, I always will tell this story just to, like, iterate that fact. But the very first episode, you know, the very first episode has a scene where the main character plays Mid-Shield Gardna, and Link from Zelda runs in and exclaims that, you know, Mid-Shield Gardna stole his shield. I mean, it was just going to be complete goofy nonsense with action. And to tell you the truth, I'm not entirely sure when it transformed in my head into an actual story. I originally just wanted it to be like a tournament fan fiction. The first season goes through a tournament. So the first season goes through a tournament, and I split the cast into 2 different groups. So I had the group that would be dueling for tournament purposes, and I had the group who they would participate in the tournament and stuff, but they would ultimately get eliminated, or they'd be called off to do things for the plot or whatever. So basically, I didn't want the main character just hogging all the spotlight and doing both tournament-savvy things and plot-savvy things. I wanted to mix it up. And so that's why characters like Singer, Jay, James, Tom, and Brett, they were all allowed to, like, flourish because I had a completely second set of duels for them that I would write using the Yu-Gi-Oh! Card game. But yeah, this was just originally going to be like a tournament fan fiction or something. I had rivalries set up that I was going to establish. Like Jay was going to have a rivalry with the Monarch user June. And they were going to face each other multiple times throughout the tournaments. And basically see, you know, who's going to, like, you know, who can one-up each other most in these tournaments. And so, yeah, I mean, so I originally had this idea for a short, like, it wasn't really short. I still had 50 episodes planned out. But there was going to be this group called the Monarchy, and their job was to just stand in your way and do evil things with cards. It was a very cookie-cutter idea. Like I said, the entire original plan was just that, you know, it was a self-insert with friends, so that we could all, you know, screw around and have our own decks and whatnot. Create cards out of the wazoo. Battlezone, by the way, on that note, the Battlezone fanfiction, okay, and the grand majority of the cards are made by me. There were some that were made by other people. But Battlezone clocks in at exactly 1,200 created cards, by the way. There's some random trivia for you. 1,200 created cards for Battlezone. I went through these things like wildfire. There's 200 episodes. Like, that's an average of 6 created cards per episode. I, like, might as well had been making my own card game. If only I thought of it that soon back then, you know? Like, if only... I don't know, it would have been really funny if I'd thought of it. But man, and then Destiny's Horizon had even more than that. So yeah, Teamudf has, he has a few too many ideas in his head. But anyway, I'm getting sidetracked here. So this is a tournament fanfiction. The first tournament basically ran the same way that I would have run it here. Then this Monarchy group, they're just cookie-cutter villains who are trying to use the cards for bad things. Everybody was going to go try to stop the Monarchy or whatever. And so I was going to have the second tournament take place in, like, this Aztec pyramid type of deal. And I remember having inspiration for this from... Let me actually see if I can pull up pictures and stuff while I'm talking here. Because I do like visual aids, and I think they help a lot. Let's see if I can get a decent picture here. This one's okay, I guess. Let's get it up. So, like, there's a place in Skies of Arcadia called Rixus, which it's just this big misty spot, and it made me think of, like, Aztec temples and things, but if they were in the sky. And so I wanted a tournament to take place in some kind of Aztec pyramid that just had this setup here. So it had the brick and it had, like, the mist on the outside, but when you went on the inside, it was kind of this weird hybrid of the Aztec pyramids themselves and, like, some type of mechanical setup where there's actual platforms and things the duelists can get on, and there's actual crowd stands. So it's a public event. It wasn't meant to be a major plot relevant thing. But yeah, like, that was all I had planned for that fanfiction initially, is just 2 big tournaments. And within those 2 tournaments, the main characters would go fight the Monarchy. They would fight the Master of the Monarchy, and, you know, they would win and everything would be hunky-dory, and that would be the end of it. But man, just, at some point, it just evolved. It became something much more. I think when it started to get a little more serious, funny enough, is with the creation of Singer. So, this is, you know, I promised we would talk about random things, random trivia and stuff. The most random of random trivia you could possibly have for Yu-Gi-Oh! Battlezone is that Axum Singer, like, one of the biggest characters of the entire series, one of the most popular characters of the entire series, and, like, the top of the top echelon for dueling in this universe. This man originally was designed to be a Yugi fanboy who would just run around all hyperactive and exclaim how much he loved Yugi Moto. And he idolized Yugi Moto and wanted to be like Yugi Moto. I even had set up for him a Dark Magician deck. Like, he had the Zonar medal that he ended up using had nothing to do with the start of the series. And it's just so weird to think about that. Like, this big juggernaut of a character just started as some nobody who was fanboying over the OC champ himself, you know? So I always get a kick out of telling people that one. Like, nobody expects that one when I'm talking about, like, the man, Exum Singer. And so what happened is, in the first season, there's this guy that I referred to as the Metal Suit Man, or known as MSM for, you know, those of you hanging around Arpagaland. Now we have like a triple reference going on here. So the Metal Suit Man, MSM, was basically a stalker of the protagonist working for the monarchy. And he would fly around in his suit and basically take snapshots and report locations back to the monarchy master and everything like that, and basically just keep track of things. And at some point, I really can't explain how or why it happened, but at some point I just determined that I wanted Singer and this Metal Suit Man to be the same person. And so the fanboy Singer just kind of died off. Like, he's in the fanfiction. You can go back to, like, I think it's episode 2 that he's in. I don't think he's there by name, but you can see him, he's still there, and then he just kind of became the Metal Suit Man. And so then, I had this really weird dream one night. I know, big surprise, coming from the guy whose dreams regularly pin him as being Captain Hook or something. I don't know what the flid. But anyway, so I had a weird dream. I was climbing up in some really just dusty attic. And there were a bunch of windows scattered throughout the attic, so, you know, you would have, like, natural moonlight coming through the windows and shining on some tables in the attic. And when I walked over in the dream to look at these tables, I saw a bunch of ritual monster cards for Yu-Gi-Oh! But they weren't any Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards I'd ever seen before. They were these very cylindrical machines that were kind of painted a bright blue, maybe like a sky blue, and they had just wide open mouths that were also cylinders, and there were like eye sockets cut through the main cylinder that made the body. And in particular, there were a couple that had stats of an attack of 100 and a defense of 1000, and then there was another one that had stats of like 2300 and 2200 or something. But I couldn't see any of the text on the card. It was just like I saw the pictures in my dream. And so I woke up, and like the second I woke up, I had the idea for the Zonar Metal deck. I don't think I named it until later, but I was just like, man, that was like a really cool dream. I want to build a deck for this guy. And then I gave it to the Metal Suit Man. And that's how the Zonar Metal deck came into existence. It was just a random one-off dream. And the 100-1000 monster card ended up being Zonar Metal Dragon 5, but I exaggerated the stats that I saw in the dream. I gave him 110,000, and the 10,000 wasn't broken back then, actually, because, you know, a lot of people, when you tell them, like, Yu-Gi-Oh! Card stats and things like that, you talk about created cards, it's really easy to design broken Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards back then. The 10,000 defense actually couldn't be used for anything except feeding the attack. The monster's not allowed to go into defense mode. It had to be in attack mode, so the 10,000 itself was just something you couldn't take advantage of. But yeah. So that's what that became, and the 2300, 2200 ended up being bought for, which was nothing special, it just did piercing damage. I didn't really... yeah. And so I came up with the gimmicks for these Zonar Metal cards. I was just like, man, let's just have a deck of all machine rituals. Like, every single card in every single monster, rather, is a machine ritual. And so I went through the upgrades for them. I'm like, okay, bot 1, bot 2, bot 3, bot 4, bot 5, and then there was Dragon 1 through 5. Then I made Cannon 1 through 5 later. But the bots and the dragons were what I originally started with, because those were kind of like the things that I saw in my dream. That's what I thought of when I woke up after that dream. I thought of bots and dragons. So the gimmick of the Zonar Metal bots was that each time you go up by 1 unit, they basically gain an arm that has access to another weapon. So Bot 1 had one arm with like a dinky pistol. Bot 2 would have 2 arms, each with a weapon. Bot 3 would have 3 arms, each with a weapon, so on and so forth. Until finally you have this big hulking creature for Bot 5, and it has like 4,000 attack or something. And even back then, I'm just like, man, this is a lot of attack points. So, like, I think I forced you to have to half the damage you take from it or something. I don't really remember what the effect was for 5, the bots, because the bots ended up taking a heavy backseat as the series progressed. The only ones I really remember accurately are Dragon 4, Bot 4, and Cannon 5. Because Cannon 5 ended up being Singer's, like, finisher. It's kind of like, if you saw Cannon 5, you're pretty much screwed. It looks like he's looking to win here. And Dragon 4, I just thought had a fun effect for back in those days. You know, this is 2006, 2007. So, you know, GX is kind of still going, but it's getting to, like, its later half of its lifespan. So there weren't synchros yet or anything. So we had rituals and fusions, basically. But anyway, so the effect that I had for Dragon 4 was a 2900, 2800, level 8. The gimmick was that if you killed it, it split up into 4 Dragon 1 units. I think the Dragon 1 units each had 600, 500. And if each of those 4 survived for 2 turns, they would all combine into Dragon 4 again. So, like, Dragon 4 could resurrect itself, but only if you kept all of its pieces around for long enough. And this is something I still want to do in my own card game, Kylo, so, you know, I'm just taking a lot of inspiration from the things I've already seen and done. And Cannon 5 was just a mess. It's a mess of a card, but it worked really well as this finisher. It had 3,800, 1,900, and it had like 55 abilities. It was a silly amount of abilities. It was really like 5. So first of all, it had to be like, it was a level 10 ritual, so you had to do that whole thing. It comes into play with like 5 counters, I think. Each time you wanted to attack, you had to spend a counter. And after it destroyed a monster in battle, you could remove a counter to do a slew of things. You could, like, deal 500 damage, you could draw a card, you could give it a Zonar counter, which boosts its attack or something, and it could attack again for a cost of 500 life points, and a counter. So it was like, this thing could just repeatedly attack. Now, so that one was broken back then, like, yeah, that one's broken. I'm not going to sit back and defend that. It's a 3,800 that can basically attack 5 times. It required a counter to attack, but it wasn't hard to come among these counters when you start with 5, so I mean, it was a broken card. And so Cannon 5 was mostly meant to be like a foil to Jay's Cyber End Dragon. You know, because he was using the cyber cards, and later he would use the SD cyber cards, which I kind of created out of, I don't know, just some random goofy nonsense. I just felt like doing something different, I guess. So yeah, Singer's deck came out of a dream, literally. I only dreamed about the deck one more time, and that was a weird dream. So, like, nobody in chat right now probably is aware of the gym that's by my house. If you saw I can't remember the name of the video. I did a video where I filmed a bunch of stuff in real life, and I made it seem like this big goofy adventure or whatever. I don't remember what the heck video this was, but I took a real camera and started filming random garbage. I briefly showed my gym in that video. Yeah, that was ages ago. That's like 2011, 2012 maybe. It was a long time ago. But not as long as this battle zone, I suppose, so I should shut up. But yeah. It took place there. Except it was like a dark dock. Like, my dream recognized that it was a gym still, but it just was attached to this really just faded out dock where you would, like, ship off boats and stuff. And in that dream, just a bunch of Zonar cards were getting summoned all over the place, and it was part of like this mock duel. I don't remember any details of the duel, I just remember a bunch of the Zonar cards going up. They were also very tall in this dream for some reason. But yeah, those were the only 2 dreams that I had involving the Zonar deck, and it was enough to just create the whole thing, so it was just really fun. And so I gave it to Singer, and there was one duel in particular that I remembered from that time. It was Jaden versus O'Brien. I think his English name is Axel. So Jaden versus O'Brien from GX. This would have been, I want to say, episode 108 of GX. The guy with the volcanic deck faces off against Jaden. And it was just like something about the atmosphere of that duel really grabbed me. It might have been the music. It might have been it was nighttime. It was like windy. You know, Cyrus was in danger. There was a bunch of stuff going on here. So just something clicked with me in that duel. And I just kind of imagined the duel with Singer having similar implications. And so I started writing the duel. And one other thing that I took for that, and I think it's even in the episode itself, is that duel takes place under the same bridge where Yugi defeated Strings to win Slifer the Sky Dragon. Osiris the Sky Dragon, if you prefer. I do. Okay. Because I always really liked that scenery for some reason. I don't know. It's just like a walkway under a bridge. I have no earthly idea why this grabbed me back then. But I'm just like, I want this duel to take place there. And so it did. But as I was going through it, I was kind of thinking about the thing that irked me about the Jaden O'Brien duel was that I really felt like O'Brien should have won that duel. He had Jaden completely cornered. Jaden's opening hand was total garbage. O'Brien's strategy was very legit. The whole volcanic shell thing, shooting them and dealing damage and everything. It was just a different atmosphere for a duel. And like, I don't know, but then Jaden won because he's Jaden. Like, Jaden always won in GX. He lost 2 or 3 duels and then he never lost again. So, I mean, yeah. So I was bothered by that. And I kind of just started thinking, I'm like, man, is there a way I can move the plot forward if Singer wins this duel? Because he's dueling the main character. And so I kind of started to get this idea of, like, you know, the twists, the pulling the veil over everybody and just kind of messing with things. And most of the time it worked, sometimes it didn't. But this was like kind of the start of that, I feel like, where I was just like, alright, the main characters and his friends have just been slowly crawling through the monarchy members one by one. Like, we've fought the first admiral, we fought the second admiral, we fought the fifth admiral. We've seen the third admiral up until this point. I don't think anybody played the third admiral at that point, though. But Singer's the fourth admiral. The admiral distinction, of course, they reference to the Valuan Armada from Skies of Arcadia, which is where, like, 5 billion Battlezone references came from. And so I'm like, alright. What if I just have this admiral win? Like, nobody's going to expect this admiral to win. You know, the good guys are just clearing out admirals left and right. And even up until this point, let's count it out. Let's see. The main character loses to an admiral in episode 2. The admiral is defeated by Jay, though, in episode 16. Let's see. What else happens here? The main character is disqualified from the tournament because his rival basically locks him in a closet and causes him to be late. I know, it's like... It's... I don't know. That's what I came up with. His rival locks him in a closet and he's late to his match, so he gets disqualified. That's it. That's the end of the main character in the tournament. James. James gets to the finals and loses to Jay. So, Jay is not really a villain. He's more of an anti-hero. But you can still treat this as, like, you know, the main characters, the good guys are losing, or whatever, right? Okay. Tom loses to Brett in episode 19. Jay defeats both James and Tom in episode 25. So, like, up to this point, there's only been, like, 3 or 4 heel wins. You know, minus the ones where... Okay, so if I want to count Jay's... Let's see, Jay's other wins would be, like, 5, 6. Okay, so there's, like... There's 6 heel wins here. And Battlezone had a duel in every episode. That was just, like, my rule. I wanted a duel in every episode. Which is certainly not true with Dokailo at all. You know, because I inflated these episodes with description and back then very, not messy language, but it's just like, it's just overinflated is really the best way to just describe it. There's too many descriptors in certain spots. This carried over until the first and second season of Destiny's Horizon, unfortunately. I was just very wordy with certain things. And I would say a lot of things that would be, you know, construed as obvious, or it's like, you don't need this information. As an example, I was just crawling through random episodes the other day, and I went to one in Destiny's Horizon, and there's 3 people reacting to something. I think it's Blaine, Amana, and Emily are reacting to something. And just the way that I word it, it's like, I word it as like, the trio of humans turned to blah, blah, blah. It's just like, you don't need that there because you know they're human. It's pointless for me to say the trio of humans. So there was a lot of inflated word count as a result of things like that when I was, you know, first writing. Just because I liked the idea of the big fancy descriptions and stuff. People had always shoehorned it in to like English lessons and things. It's like, you need description. What does it look like? What is it doing? And they hammered this in so much that I overkilled it sometimes. So yeah, you just have very weird phrases like that cluttering up certain episodes. And with the card descriptions being inflated, some of the Battlezone episodes got really long. And by the time I got to season 3 of Destiny's Horizon, I just finally decided I'm like, I don't feel like doing this anymore. I feel like just coming down to earth and writing to the typical person. You know, because I was very formal when I was a student, a high school student in particular. It was like everything had to be done to some kind of code or some kind of ethic or whatever. So I would write things as though they were being graded. You know what I mean? So this sometimes led to very formal, technically correct language, but it's just for the purpose of a story, it looks so weird, it looks so out of place. Like moving prepositions to the front of a sentence or something is grammatically correct. You know, you shouldn't be ending a sentence with a preposition. But for the purpose of a story, it doesn't sound as clean when you're moving those prepositions around. You should just bite the bullet and leave the preposition at the end. You know, it sounds better. But I didn't operate that way when I wrote Battlezone. And I only started changing when I did Destiny's Horizon. And then finally, Season 3 Destiny's Horizon, I just was like, alright, this is it. We're basically just going to talk to the reader. That's going to be my premise for writing, is I'm going to talk to the reader. And that's kind of how I evolved into the style these days. Which I honestly think is better than what I did back then. I don't need the overinflated descriptions. You know, people enjoyed what they were reading, but it could have gotten done faster. It didn't need to take so many words per episode. So yeah, there's all those sorts of things. It was a lot of fun, though. And so, at that time, there's only about 6 heel victories, and I decided, alright, Singer's going over. Singer's winning this one. And it threw everybody. Like, you know, everybody... The first part of the Singer duel, one of my best friends at the time, and one of my biggest reviewers, Swim Mystery, I just call him Swim, even he was like, oh boy, here we go again. You know, it was very sarcastic. It's like, oh, not another admiral trying to defeat the main character. Like, geez, when are these monarchy idiots going to learn? And then I post part 2, and Singer wins. And everyone's basically like, you know, holy crap, wait, where's this going now? You know, the main character just got his crap kicked in, and he was like KO'd. You know, it's like Singer just KO'd this person. It's like just an outright clean victory. There's no like tricks. There's no gimmicks or anything, just Singer wins the duel. He just outplays the main character and wins the match. Which is the thing that a lot of heels should, you know, do. They should have the power to overcome the hero on occasion. It's like, I don't know, this is just something that I firmly believe. It's not like the good guys win all the time in real life. I mean, have you ever looked up statistics for, you know, the percentage of people who get away in police chases? Have you ever looked up the percentages of murders that are solved and everything? There's some alarming stats out there, but because of the way we present the news, you're led to believe that they're inflated one way or the other. You're led to believe that everything's very, you know, it's very chaotic, but we can take care of it. We have the power to solve any mystery. And it's not always true. The good guys don't always win. Maybe the good guys don't even win half the time. So yeah, I just felt like doing it. And I wrote the story around the main character losing that duel to Singer and basically saying, okay, now what happens next? And so in doing that, it immediately established Singer as a big-time player. That was his first duel. He hadn't dueled at all in the rest of the series up until that point. Now suddenly, 26 and 27, he steamrolled. Well, he didn't steamroll. It was kind of an even match, but you know what I'm saying. Okay, he defeats the main character. So I had to write around that. Okay, and I had to make decisions. And I kind of liked the reception to it, so I had the main character lose again very shortly after that. Although this one didn't work out quite as well. And I think it might have to do with the fact that, number one, it ultimately didn't end up meaning anything. The main character just kind of loses to the user of the 5-God Dragon, and he gets dropped down a shaft. But he's able to, like, pick himself up and free himself from the prison and just continue or whatever. So maybe it's like because the stakes weren't really there, maybe there wasn't much of a reaction to it. And the other lurking part to that might have been that it was a 2v1. So, well, okay, technically it was like a 3v1. Here's what happens. This is a tag team match. We're going to have ourselves a tag team match. And, so it was the main character and his love interest versus the first two admirals of the monarchy. So, Reen and June. So, June being the same monarchy member that defeated the main character in episode 2. Alright. And partway through the duel, they start slowly convincing June that what the monarchy is doing is wrong. The monarchy is not actually out to help anybody. The monarchy is basically just a bunch of dueling bullies. I mean, that's basically the gist of it. They're dueling bullies, and they're doing some bad voodoo with energy. And so June is swayed to join the good side, but not before Reen blasts the main character with 5-God Dragon and eliminates him from the duel. So the main character took a loss here, but it didn't really, it didn't affect anything. So Reen was, like, defeated afterwards by June and the love interest, and so maybe in just that regard it didn't look as important, kind of reflecting on it. And so then, we just kind of went into the end game. So I had Tom take on the main villain, the Master, at the time, so the Master can show off his deck, basically. And then we send you into overtime here for the big stuff. And then here he is. Here's another great Battlezone character of all time. There's Deffer's first appearance. This character, Deffer, is like an anomaly to me. So, I don't have any clear memory of how I came up with this character, like one bit. I can tell you where I got the art idea from. I got the art idea from a random set of debris in EVE Online, which actually I should still be able to find this thing for you. Where am I going to find it, though? Is it going to be in... is it this one? No. Oh, darn it. It should be called, like, Stuff from Generator, right? Is there a folder here that starts with S? Here it is. I found it. Okay. Ancient BS coming in. Okay, so this is a screenshot from EVE Online. It's a bunch of like space rocks, but the way that they were positioned, it looked like a giant colossus to me. I'm just imagining this thing as like, this is just a giant behemoth of a creature. And so I took a screenshot of it and I'm like, this is what Defer's gonna look like. Also, I like how I bothered to put only edition for like the one-of-a-kind cards. Like, this doesn't make any sense. One of a kind. Yeah, so this is a 1,000-2,500. You needed to play Defer the Rip for it to come out. It's not defer. A lot of people always mistook this for the word defer. It's not. It's the word defer. I was just bad because, you know, similar spelling in English. Plus 200 attack for each card in your deck. And stuff about scythe tokens or whatever. But yeah. So this was like the very first boss monster that I made for a major villain in my Battlezone story. Defer, the face of the void. At around the time, so I was still in high school at this time, so I wasn't like playing around with a lot of philosophy or anything, but I bring that up because I took philosophy classes in my undergrad studies. But at the time, I had no experience with philosophy. You know, just what's a 17, 18-year-old kid gonna tell you about philosophy? You know, like, okay. So I just remember thinking, like, it's weird how we kind of look at everything. Here, let me change the song really quick. We've been listening to this one for a while. It was just weird to me how we seemed to look at everything in black and white terms. So it's like we have the light and we have the darkness. And I was just kind of imagining, you know, it feels like there could be something in between that. Because it's like you see this in movies, like in Star Wars and stuff like that. It's not like this was a big giant revelation I suddenly had in 2007. I'm just kind of thinking about it in the theme of a story. I'm like, man, could I come up with something that's in the middle of the light and the dark here? And so I looked at Chaos, because Yu-Gi-Oh! Already had a combination of light and dark to make Chaos, but I kind of didn't want to just rehash Chaos. It's kind of like, this has already been done, which is just the philosophy for a lot of the premise of a lot of my crap. This has already been done, so here's this weird thing that Teamudf is doing instead. I don't know. Call me aversive, I guess. So yeah, I came up with Void. I don't remember the thought process after that. I guess it was just like the idea is that there's an absence of both light and dark, and so we'll call it the Void. And this creature, Defer, can be a dual spirit that's basically trying to get people to look at this third face, this third side of things, and recognize that there's something beyond the typical convention of what they would, you know, normally perceive in life. Okay, everybody sees things in terms of light and dark in the universe. I'm going to show them this alternative method. I'm going to show them what I believe is the right method, and that would be an absence of both. Okay. The weird thing, though, is I don't think I presented it as an absence of both back then. I feel like I presented it more of the idea of, like, overcoming both of them. So it's like they both exist, right? But instead of dropping them, you're overcoming both the light and the dark, which I feel is different from just having it be an empty void. So, I don't know. It didn't, like, matter back then, but I'm always just kind of intrigued by how I kind of wrote this different from what I might have wanted. I don't know, but it's also, like, it could also be a different interpretation. Like, who knows? So, yeah. And, like, even then, so this was the start of where the story started to become a little dark. This is where you get backstory on the main character, that they dueled on this burning ship back when they were a kid. there's this tournament on a ship that their father took them to, and the father was a huge perfectionist and required perfection of his son in dueling competitions. But some weird event happens on the boat and it gets set on fire. The SS Venturer. And so the ship is just lit ablaze. And so the finals of the tournament have to be canceled. And so the villain basically reveals that, you know, they were the one who caused the fire on that ship all those years ago. And they basically caused the character to lose their Silent Swordsman level 7 card. Because throughout the series thus far, they've been playing Silent Swordsman level 3 and 5, but he never grew to level 7. And it turned out the reason for that was that he didn't have the card anymore. It was lost in this fire. But in that same instance, the villain kind of like, he burned himself? He had scars on his face? I can't remember to what degree I had this set up, but something set this boat on fire. It was either the villain or someone related to the villain, because now that I'm thinking about it, it might have not even been Reflect. It might have been someone else. But anyway, yeah, he apparently met Reflect on that boat when he was a kid, and got set ablaze, and now Reflect's face is all screwed up. So he's got these masks on, and his deck reflects the masks that he has to wear, and so the dual spirit Deffer basically comes out and says, yeah, but these masks are of light and dark. There's a third type of mask. You know, we go from there and we do all the usual, you know, fanfare nonsense. And like super duper fanfare nonsense. I'm not even kidding. So here's turn 15 up here called Reflection Zone. No surprise to anybody in chat right now, but I had an affinity for writing multiple dimensions even back then. I had an idea for the mirror dimension, where this is the dimension that would pretty much, just on the tin, it would mirror someone's desire. And this is how one of the more broken protagonist cards, Surplus Swordsman, kind of came out. And Surplus Swordsman was pretty busted for back in the day. So Surplus Swordsman was a... Here, I said I was going to find visual aids. Let me go get visual aids. Let's see. This is going to be in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro folder. Right? Where are we going here? Can I find him? Here he is. Okay. I did not have this made back then, and I apologize, but it's like, for sake of the demonstration, I'm showing all the art that I borrowed from back in those days. Yeah, it was a level 4 1600 Earth Warrior. When it's normal summon, you get a spell card from your graveyard and add it to your hand. Like, this was a really powerful effect even back then. So basically, he wishes this card into existence to win a duel in the mirrored dimension in episode 15. And it turns out that that person he dueled in episode 15 was the main villain at the time, the Master of the Monarchy. And I'm not sure what happened. There was like maybe a reading comprehension thing, or I just didn't illustrate it well enough. But I spoiled in episode 15 that the person he dueled was the villain. He walks away in the final scene, basically contemplating to himself the strength of the protagonist and how he's going to have to test him more, etc. But this went unchecked by everybody for some reason. I'm not sure what happened. So when it came back, the reveal was like a non-reveal. It was just kind of like, I remember you, but the readers were kind of a little lost because they didn't catch it or they didn't remember. So yeah, Deffer gets defeated, Reflect is defeated. Reflect gets completely buried because at some point I decided there's this man they call Rig Veda. Oh boy. Boy, is there this man they call Rig Veda. So, this is an origin story that I hate that I have forgotten. I wish with all my soul I could remember how I came up with this character. Because if there's like any influential character on the timeline of Battlezone and the timeline of my, and the timeline of my card game shenanigans in general, Rig Veda's creation process is something that I just vastly regret forgetting. At some point, I came up with this character who was going to seal himself in a pod for 11 years and just feed himself information from tubes. Just basically downloading entire databases of knowledge into his head. That's like the best analogy I can come up with. He's just got tubes injected everywhere. And he's in this stasis pod and he's just floating for 11 years. Just info after info after info. And so when he exits the pod, he's just some super genius. He knows about everything. He's got ideas for everything you can think of. If there's some random piece of stupid trivia or knowledge, this man probably had it in his head. And so that's how he gave himself the nickname the world's greatest scientist. Because he kind of had the solutions to a lot of things that people didn't have the solutions to. Or he at least knew how to start tackling them. And yeah, so funny enough, the approach to introducing Rig Veda was very informal. So the protagonist defeats Defer and Reflect, and in the immediate next episode, Brett and Dr. Crowler, yes, the same Dr. Crowler from GX, they're just wandering the remains of the Monarchy base, because the Monarchy has been completely torn to shreds by just everybody by this point. Like, even Jay gets in and just beats the crap out of a Monarchy member. Like, even Jay is in there, just killing things. And Brett and Crawler just stumble upon the pod, and Rig Veda just opens it up, and there he is. And so the first thing Rig wants to do is he wants to test all of the knowledge that he's put into the arcane. His gimmick was an arcane deck back then. And people were kind of annoyed by this at first. The gimmick of the deck was that it used mana counters for everything. So the way it worked is you played a field spell called Mana Fountain, and every turn you would generate mana counters equal to the number of cards in your hand. Now, mana counters themselves were not on the cards or anything. They were just kind of this secondary resource the character had command of. So when I would list the character's life totals and everything, I would also list how many mana counters that Rig Veda had whenever he dueled, so that the players could keep track. And so you had to spend these mana counters to play any arcane card. I did have a system for the monsters. The monsters required 1 mana counter per level star. No tributes needed for highest star monsters. So the Summon Planetar, Rig's original ace monster, say 3,500, 100, level 8, you would need to pay 8 mana counters to summon this card, basically. And so Rig duels Crowler and defeats him. To this day, I'm not really... So, I have talked about this before, on stream at least, where there's a thing in a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! Duels, like pretty much every Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel, especially in the anime, where no matter what, no matter who's dueling or no matter what, it's always like down to the last 100 points or something. Like, every duel is close. And so, unfortunately, I didn't really have a problem with this philosophy back then because, you know, it induced suspense and it induced drama. I wasn't concerned with creating multiple types of duels back then. I was just concerned with the drama behind the duel. And so, you know, I kind of introduced this new character, and Crowler gets him all the way down to 100 before just getting blown out by the Summon Planetar. The Summon Planetar... Oh, it actually had 0 defense points, it looks like it. Maybe the version I created for Dokailo had the 100. But anyway, 3,500 attack points for a Yu-Gi-Oh! Card, level 8. It didn't do much special. It could attack. But what it did do is it dealt 200 points times the level stars of the defeated monster, so it could burn, basically. It had a very high score, and it could burn in addition to that. But in exchange, it would switch to defense mode after it attacked, so you had the next turn, basically, to try to get rid of the Summon Planetar before it can do anything horrific to you the next turn. So kind of a fun little ace to start out with. There wasn't much else to note about his deck at the time. But yeah. So that was like the introduction to Rig Veda. And so I like realized that I needed somebody to have been watching this pod. Otherwise, none of this makes sense. So before I get to the episode with Rig Veda, I kind of have to design a little bit of backstory around how this works. And so I ultimately decide that the Monarchy are using Defer to just fuel some kind of energy. I didn't really have anything specific in mind for what the energy was being used for, but the gist of it was similar to GX Season 3, where it's like, there's dual energy, and this Defer thing is absorbing it. And he had, like, his own machine or something. Like the Defer machine or whatever I would have called it back then. I wonder if I just referenced Chrono Trigger and called it the Mammon machine. I actually don't remember. Maybe I did. Maybe I didn't, though. I might not have even named the darn thing. But, yeah, so there's this machine absorbing the energy of defeated duelists and feeding them into the tubes, which would power, you know, Rig Veda's little experiment. So the Monarchy was all just like this big farce. You know, there was no like bullying agenda, really. It was all just to fuel Rig Veda's revival. And so I'm like, well, then it makes sense for the admirals to actually be working for Rig Veda. And I'm like, okay, let's, you know, so when Rig Veda breaks out, all the admirals are going to be working for him. But as time passed, I kind of got tired of most of the admirals. Reen and June were okay. I didn't mind them. Baxter was just a throwaway villain. He was like a tiny little creep character who played zombies. He ran multiple soul-absorbing bone towers, so he would mill you out and stuff like that. I mean, he was I didn't have anything special for him. And Sandy was just like a high school ditzy prep girl. So, I mean, she had all the mannerisms of a high school ditzy girl, and yeah. So, it was like, I didn't have anything terribly invested into the other four. But then I'm sitting here like, man, Singer is the only admiral that hasn't been defeated. Like, he had that one duel against the protagonist, and as the whole Monarchy base is just getting torn to shreds by the rest of the cast, Singer's nowhere to be found. He's just like, he's hanging out somewhere. Who knows what he's doing? What is this guy doing, and why is he not, like, helping, you know, his fellow Monarchy members and stuff like that? So it was just, as I started asking myself these questions and stuff, I'm like, okay, what if the whole thing's a setup by Rig Veda? He's just actually using the Monarchy, but Singer's his protege or something. You know, Singer could be secretly working for Rig Veda, even though he says he's working for the Master. And so that was how the partnership of Rig Veda and Singer got formed. To the best of my memory, at least. And so everybody breaks out of the Monarchy. They've got the... You know, they've got the police coming by and everything to arrest what Monarchy members still exist and everything. Meanwhile, you just see Singer and Rig Veda standing on a ledge overlooking this whole thing, and they're just like, huh, well, that was interesting. I guess now it's time for the next part of the plan. And they just kind of screw off, and they walk away. Nobody has any clue where they've gone. And only Brett and Dr. Crowler even saw Rig Veda. It was also at this time that I did something very fun. So the Monarchy base is crumbling and everything. People are getting torn apart. There's duels everywhere. It's just rampant chaos and stuff. Everyone's looking for the Master, trying to confront him and end this madness. Singer's downloading data in some random computer room in the base. And Jay just walks through the door looking for opponents. He sees Singer, and Singer sees Jay. And Singer just looks at this guy, and he can just tell he's got a serious dueling aura about him. Like, whoever has just walked in is not unworthy one bit. This duelist, Jay, has got something to him. And Jay looks at Singer, and he kind of feels the same thing. He immediately looks at Singer and is like, you don't have the same presence as all the other mooks that I've been blitzkrieging on the way through here. You know, they don't use the word blitzkrieg, but I'm giving you an analogy here, an example. And so these two have this intense stare down, but whatever Singer's doing, he's done. Like his disc beeps or whatever, the computer signifies that his download is complete, and he's got other things to do. So he's like, in passing, maybe next time. It's like, it's just very few words are exchanged between these two, but it's just like they know. They know that if they get their hands on the other, this is probably a worthy opponent for me. But now is just not the time to do it. The fate has conspired against them. Singer has other things to do. He has to help Rig Veda prepare for his revival. And so he walks off. And holy flid. Doing that, I didn't actually expect the reception that I got to this. It was just a minor thing for me back then, where I'm just like, let's just tease Jay versus Singer, because Jay won the tournament in the first season. He's still undefeated. He's plowing through Monarchy people left and right. And Singer, it's like, to me, I look at Singer as a main event competitor because I'm booking him that way, right? But in actuality, from the perspective of other readers, he's only defeated the main character. And that does give you merit, but he still hasn't done anything else. He just is the only undefeated Monarchy member walking around. Like, even the Master one in that episode 15 that I mentioned earlier with the whole mirror dimension thing. So, Singer is just, he's got one duel under his belt. So, I'm thinking about it as the perspective of I'm booking two main eventers to go against each other later on. But I wouldn't have thought that the reader would look at it like that. Like, Singer just, it didn't look like Singer had the resume yet to the typical reader. But maybe it did, because everybody was so hype to see Jay versus Singer just because I threw that tease in. It's because I had them cross paths. They're both super serious. They both have this just dominating presence about them, and they had one goofy stare down with like 2 or 3 lines of dialogue exchange, and for some reason this was enough to just build the hype in people's minds. This was like the greatest fluke to happen in early Battlezone, and it caused so many changes down the line that I am super happy with. Like, if they had not reacted that way to Jay versus Singer as a potential duel, I would have still done it, but I don't think it would have had such a big impact on my writing style if they hadn't responded to that. And so this is why I tend to draw parallels between telling a story, for card games at least, and other things where you fight. I'm sure you can find comparable notions, but I'm just saying this is why I look at similarities between card game battles and WWE wrestling. Like, the scripted version of wrestling, professional wrestling. I feel like there's a lot of parallels you can draw between how to build a good card game battle and a good wrestling match. With history behind the two opponents, are they related to one another somehow? Are they just two strangers passing in the wind who happen to glance at one another and say, "You're the one I want to fight"? It made so much sense to me to draw these parallels. And so that's why I derive a lot of the way that I book things from just looking at wrestling companies and how they changed their writing styles over the years. To get people hyped for matches back in the day like The Rock versus Stone Cold Steve Austin, all the way to modern day where it's like, why can't they get Roman Reigns over? What are they doing wrong with this guy? And why do people not feel the same hype they feel for big matches these days as they feel back in those days? Or, alternatively, why is it that indie companies can have such huge backing? And how does it work? Like, what's the story behind the two characters to get them on that battlefield in that match so that for like 30 blissful minutes of your life, you can just see two people tear each other to shreds and it makes total sense. And it grabs you and it freaking holds on to you and it just hangs on and it won't let go until someone's life points hit 0. And that was the parallel I drew with wrestling. I did not look at it back then nearly as heavy as I do now. But it was like I could still see the influence back then. I went through the ruthless aggression age of wrestling, where I saw factions like Evolution and JBL's Cabinet, and like I saw Los Guerreros, and I saw Edge and Rey Mysterio and Kurt Angle and all these guys with just vastly different personalities. And every month, WWE had to come up with a different combination of all these characters and get them to just annihilate each other on pay-per-view. And it was so fascinating to me back then, because it's like they would repeat matches. They would repeat matches between months that people would love. They would repeat matches between months that people would hate. And so I'm so invested in these ideas. I'm looking at these things like, man, why did people love the Kurt Angle Chris Benoit feud, but why did they hate the Triple H Scott Steiner feud? It's like there's so many different dynamics to look at here. And it blew my mind seeing how this could be applied to card games at some point. Again, not at this point in my writing career, but just overall, I'm just like, man, this makes so much sense. It's like, it's so good. I just need to give people a reason to want to see them duel. It's not just the fact that they have to have a reason to fight each other. It's that people have to care about wanting to see it. There's two sides to that coin. And it's really easy to miss one of those sides of the coin. And so I started thinking about this duality later on, and I'm like, okay, how can I do this? Is it possible to take, like, Destiny's Horizon? Is it possible to take characters like Voltage and Engo and have their battle be at the level that Singer versus Jay was? Like, this one duel determined so much about my writing style in regards to who faces who and when do they face them. It was such a moving idea to me. And part of that is why I fell so in love with writing Battlezone, writing Zero Freeze and Destiny's Horizon, coming up with ideas for Z-Sec and Paradise and Eternity Dream and Holy Flid, like all these stories back and forth, Second Era. God, there was one called freaking, what was the one with Cade Cole? I think that was just another iteration of Eternity Dream. There's like 3 Eternity Dreams. What else do I have here? Gate Rider, Power of Unity. I was going to do a Zero Freeze Redux. Just all these things jumped at me. We've got Battle Crest now. We were going to have Battlezone R at some point. I was going to come back and redo Battlezone with a different cast so that I could tell similar stories from different perspectives and say, you know, what if this happened instead? Like, have you ever heard of the Star Wars Infinities comics? I think I brought this up a couple weeks ago on stream. There's comics called Star Wars Infinities where they ask what-if questions for Star Wars. One of the first ones I saw was, what if Luke failed to blow up the Death Star? I mean, that's huge! That completely changes the dynamic of the story! And so I got into visualizing all these different casts, all these different characters, all these different outcomes. And so now you can kind of see why sometimes old Teamudf here, he's got trouble trying to keep track of the same idea or sticking to the same idea one at a time, because I'm always constantly moving. I'm always thinking, man, what would this outcome look like? What would that outcome look like? Is this one going to be fun? Is that one going to be fun? It's such a fun puzzle to sit down and solve. And it's so engaging to me. I get so bored with so many aspects of life, but like trying to figure out which story to write, trying to figure out which character goes over in this duel, like for card games. If I want to write a killing game, you know, which character gets murdered first? Because you have to get attached to the entire cast of a killing game. Otherwise, you know, what's the point? You don't want to have boring characters in your killing game. There's got to be a purpose for them somewhere. And so it's like, but you have to get invested enough to be able to kill them in that sense. And that's a great puzzle to me. That's such a huge puzzle. So it's like, man, it's just, it's so much better to think about these sorts of things than to just sit here and be bored. Like, when it comes down to it, it's like super exciting that I can get this far and have trouble trying to figure out which series to write. Or, you know, I can't sit down and I can't get into the correct mood to come up with a scene or something, because it's at least still a freaking amazing puzzle to try to figure out which way to go. And I hate sitting here and being bored with a lot of other aspects of life. I get so complacent. I just sit here, I kind of fade out, I just kind of gloss away, and I just let things happen. And I think it's pretty obvious when I let things happen. I'm not invested into it. I'm not like trying to be strategic about anything. I'm just like sitting there and it's like, all right, well, this thing, it happened. We'll go on to the next one now. You know, I like things that can keep me engaged because I get bored so freaking easily. And it's just the worst feeling to be so bored. And so this was something that I could really jump into and grab, and I ran with it. And by the time I got to season 3, people were waiting for Singer versus Jay. They were waiting for certain matches that they wanted to see. James runs off and gets himself the Aeon armor deck. Now he's going to come back, and he's going to have this new deck with him, this new one-of-a-kind deck that the entire Aeon community had to have a tournament for. They basically call back all the descendants of the Aeon clan, and it's like whoever wins this small tournament gets like the deck. They get the deck of the culture. This culture that I gave 10,000 years of backstory to. I gave this culture so much backstory that it predated the Seal of Orichalcos. That's how many ideas I had for that culture. And the Seal of Orichalcos was supposed to go back about that long. It's like, man, this was so much fun just starting to make the branches and the twists and things like that. And so, you know, when's this character gonna come back? When's this character gonna come back? I always had a problem with writing very large casts. I get character ideas and I latch onto them and I don't want to let go. That's probably a flaw in my writing style, but darn it if it's not like one of the more fun things to do. I probably would hold back on it these days, or I would make more one-shot characters that I don't intend to come back. Although, ironically, one of the most popular characters from Zero Freeze was the one-shot character, Visa Poiman. I mean, people loved him. He was meant to be a one-shot. So, you know, I get all these questions, I get engaged with the feedback, I get engaged with talking to the readers and things like that. So it's like, in that regard, that started helping me, like, realizing that I wasn't as much of a shut-in as I believed I was. I wasn't as much of an introverted person as I thought I was. I was, like, super into, like, going back and forth with people about the story. And so, again, that's just, like, why I latch on to writing so much, and that's why I at least want to keep doing it in some capacity. You know, whether it be an actual story or a visual novel, or coming up with some kind of goofy RPG game, RPG maker game, rather. It's just, I don't know, it's so much better than just sitting around and doing nothing and not engaging with people. I think I teach for a similar reason. I'm into talking to the people. It's fun bouncing ideas. But yeah, so like season 3 rolls in and we've got all these changes being made. Jay comes back and he gets a new deck, and that only encourages people more. Rick Veda has this shady sidekick called Psy. He's a possessed man just running this creepy blood mannequin deck, and nobody can seem to figure him out. James has got his new Aeon armor cards. The main character's running around with his usual stuff. And Singer comes back, and Singer gets his second duel against the main character. So, like, 53 episodes in. So, Singer has dueled twice in 53 episodes. In the first match is against the main character, and the second match is against the main character. So everybody's kind of like, they're starting to get calmed down and everything. You know, it's like that dream match of Jay versus Singer kind of looks like it's in jeopardy now. It's not going to mean as much to the readers if they're not undefeated because, like, Singer just came out and, you know, he pulled one over on everybody. He beat the main character. And so, like, they're getting calmed down. They're like, okay, Singer's gonna duel the protagonist again. All right, this is the rematch. You know, this is the rematch. And he wins. He wins again. Singer defeats the main protagonist a second time, clean, no strings attached. It was the right move to make. There was no reason for the main character to defeat Singer in this instance. And so people again are just like, holy flid, dude. Like, Singer actually means something. You know, he's helping make the series unpredictable because whenever the main character goes up against him, we don't know what's going to happen. We were pretty sure this is just going to be your excuse to give the main character his win back. Like, you know, the 50-50 booking that WWE does a lot these days, and I don't like it, but that's what you would typically see in a card game anime. Is like, Yugi, oh no, Yugi lost to Kaiba, he's got to get his win back. Yugi lost to Raphael, he's got to get his win back. Jaden lost to Aster, he's got to get his win back. The main character never got his win back against Singer. Ever! He never got it! In all 200 episodes of Battlezone, all the way through Battle Crest, all the way through Destiny's Horizon, when some of these characters come back and they crossed over and everything, he never beat him! And it was just a different thing to see back then, because everybody was used to Jaden winning everything. My main character, you know, for as much as he was my friend, that Swim guy, one of my major reviewers, he criticized my main character because my main character would win pretty darn often. Let me see, actually. So his last loss, I want to say, was episode 34 at this point. That, you know, that 2v2 that ended up not mattering. And he doesn't lose. Yeah, he does not lose any other duel all the way up until episode 53. So that's a pretty big gap when you're looking at the scope of a fan fiction. You know, nobody knows how long this thing's gonna last. It's already the longest fan fiction on the board so far, but it's like, you know, you still don't have a real scope for when it's gonna end. So it could just end immediately, and, you know, suddenly 60 episodes or so, it's like, okay, you know, I guess that was kind of a long time. But if it continues, then it's, you know, then relatively it might not be. So let's see. Without that, his last meaningful loss was episode 27, which was the duel to Singer. So it's like, nobody's expecting the repeat, and we get the repeat. And it was around this point that I started realizing that other characters do need the limelight here. This is where I ultimately changed my writing style to focus on other characters, and not just for the sake of the tournament. So you may remember at the beginning of this, I said I had two groups of people. I had the plot duelists, and I had the plot duelists, and I had the tournament duelists. They would crisscross every once in a while, but ultimately everyone kind of had their spot. And like after the second Singer duel, although people were happy with the result that Singer won, it kind of started to come out that it's like people weren't terribly enthralled with having the main character kind of butt in to every little plot duel that he could fit in. Other characters were getting plot duels. Other characters were undefeated at this point. Like Sherry was undefeated for a long time, but it didn't matter to people because she wasn't fighting plot-relevant duelists. You know, she didn't have big plot-moving duels, so like people didn't mind. You know, people didn't care as much that she was undefeated or that she had a long streak of no losses or whatever. And so like I kind of started taking a look at this, and I'm like, all right, well, maybe we should go further with this, because I'd already planned the third duel between Singer and the main character, and I planned on the main character going over. Like, I was like, all right, you know, finally the third time, the main character's gonna go over. He's finally, you know, third time's the charm sort of deal. And I got the feedback from this episode 53, and it's just like, I'm like, huh. this doesn't seem like a good idea. You know, people are responding pretty well to the unpredictability of Singer. Like, Singer's turning everything upside down, and he's only had 2 matches the entire series. But people are just like, they're kind of growing bored of the main character inserting himself into the plot and winning. So then I started thinking, okay, can I, like, sneak other characters into the plot here and make them relevant to things? And so I started playing with this idea, because it's like, I've got this side duel coming up with Brett and the main character. You know, let's swap out the main character and let's put James in there. Because then James can get, like, a huge win over one of Rig Veda's, like, most dangerous proteges. Because Singer, Rig Veda, and Sai are all running around together. People see the impact that Singer's having, and people understand the scope of Rig Veda's plan to revive the Gigas. So it's like, this third person, Sai, automatically gets like a free pass. He's already a big threat. And so if James can go over that big threat, not only does that help qualify James for some upcoming events, but that helps qualify the Aeon armor deck that I spent so much time working toward. You know, let's see what we've got here. Elagos of the Aeon is episode 40. James obtains the deck in episode 45. So like 40 to 45, I'm building the deck. We don't see it again until 52. And the way that I did 52 was very deliberate. James is walking around. He has a chip on his shoulder from when Jay defeated him in the finals of the first tournament back in Season 1. He has this new Aeon armor deck. He's dying to try it out. He runs into some throwaway character at the time, Rudy Gins, I think his name was. I know his first name was Rudy. Second name might have been Gins. So Rudy Gins. And Rudy is just in some random club challenging people. James steps up and is like, yeah, I want a piece of that. Rudy is using a cyber deck. Jay uses a cyber deck. And so the idea that I'm conveying to the reader is that if James can defeat a cyber deck, he might have a better chance against Jay. And I had a discussion with Rainstorm about this recently, where I try to point toward the fact that it's the duelist that makes the deck, it's not the deck that makes the duelist. I really am a big proponent of this. I had really strange ideas that I did not go through, such as, like, one of the Singer-Jay duels that I had in mind was that Singer and Jay were going to switch decks so that they could prove who actually is making the deck good versus who can just kind of pick up cards and fling them out and everything. So I had some really strange plans in mind. And I revisited this concept again in Destiny's Horizon, where Zin duels someone who stole Blaine Phoenix's deck. But the gimmick is that that person who stole Blaine Phoenix's deck is not Blaine Phoenix. And so they don't know how to accurately use the deck to, like, the same way that he would use it. And the way that I set up my character decks is they have oddly specific strategies. They're specific to the character and their personality. They're not specific to an archetype. The character has their favorite cards in the deck. They're not playing to the meta. They're playing to themselves. And so some random person who picks up the same deck and uses it should not be intended to play it the same way. And so the synergy between the deck and the character will be different. Yeah, give them a deck with another style and they wouldn't get it. Yeah, I think this makes perfect sense. And so even back then I'm like, okay, James can get this win over the cyber deck. But that's not going to point to him immediately being able to defeat Jay. That's just going to hint that he's got something that can go up against the cyber deck. But can he go up against Jay's cyber deck? That's the question that we're building toward now. And so I enjoyed kind of making these little weaves between the characters. Because as I often state, Battlezone was a largely action-based series. There was character development, but it was second place. Sometimes it was third place. The duels, the battles, the wars, those were first place in Battlezone. Those were the things I was writing the story for at the time. I was in love with writing the matches. And so I would write to the psychology of the matches. So yeah, there's just a bunch of different dynamics flowing between the characters. So now, James wants his revenge on Jay. The readers are hoping that Jay and Singer will throw down at some point. And now there's other characters running around that are very threatening, and it's hard to get a scope of who's actually better than who, because Sai is in there with Rick Veda and Singer. Singer's beaten the main character twice, but he hasn't dueled anyone else, so he's got a big fat question mark over his head. What is this guy really capable of? We've seen Rick Veda put away Crowler and Solomon Moto, Yugi Moto's grandfather. So it's like, what are these people capable of? And we're not seeing a lot of interlaced dueling. So I've got all the wins are being separated here. You can't draw a triangle out for who's better than who, rock, paper, scissors. It's getting hard to do that. I haven't had them interact too much. And that's all building up to the Tokyo Tour tournament that I was running at the time. So this tournament, and I think that the Tokyo Tour tournament also helps maybe kind of illustrate the way that I set up the plots and stuff sometimes. You may recall, I've been talking for a while here, but just to bring you back, this here was when Singer first dueled the main character, episode 26 and 27. The Tokyo Tour tournament had already begun. The tournament was already in full swing. As a matter of fact, the first tournament match is right here, when Brett steals Ulevo, and the main character has to duel him. So, as soon as the open season tournament was over, a second one was already going in episode 23. But what was going on here was, I basically invented a tournament that would let me write as much plot as I wanted. So it's like, you went through the whole monarchy, and you went through this filler, and you got through all these things, and all of this is encompassing the Tokyo Tour tournament. So the rules of the tournament were pretty simple. I would say it's close to Battle City here. So you need 6 wins. You're not getting any locator cards or anything fancy like that. It's just you need 6 wins. If you lose twice, you're out. So basically you get a free loss, which is admittedly how I could just get away with letting the main character lose a duel here in episode 53, because they have a free loss, basically. But at the same time, it was just kind of like an open competition. So, you would just go around trying to defeat people. And now it's I'm thinking about it in hindsight, it's the timeline for, how is it really taking this long to win 6 freaking matches? I mean, I don't know. Maybe that was an unwise move on my part. But yeah, so it was open, basically. It was open. I forget why I segued into that, though. So yeah, there's all these different dynamics going on between the characters, and we're taking our time here with the Tokyo Tour. So the Tokyo Tour finals are coming up. People are starting to get eliminated and things like that. There's clever ways to eliminate people. Ulevo is a match winner. And for those of you not familiar with Yu-Gi-Oh!, or if you just don't remember the card type, a match winner basically is if you attack directly with this card and it reduces the opponent's life points to 0, you win the match, not the duel. So, you win the whole 2 out of 3. And so my idea basically was that if someone were to attack you directly with this, it would count as 2 losses, not 1. And so Brett stole this card with the intent of immediately eliminating people, because if he could attack them directly, it would count as 2 losses, not just 1. And thus that kicks him out of the tournament, and that leaves more space for him and whoever the heck else is running around that can help him. Okay, so there's goofy little small things going on. So it was already at this point, I kind of abandoned the tournament model there was still tournaments going on, but they weren't the focal point. There was so much other crap going on that it was like the tournaments themselves were taking a back seat. But as plot is happening, as events are going by, you know, Tom comes back, and, you know, Sabata's character, you know, Tom comes back, and he's super pissed that the main character beat him in season 1, and, you know, it kind of went all downhill from there. You know, Brett humiliated him at the start of season 2. He's been downtrodden for a while, so he comes back with his demise and ruin deck, and he's just like, I'm gonna get my revenge. You know, all these things are going on that have to do with the characters, but the tournament itself is still progressing. But it's not progressing in a way that it's like completely intrusive to the plot. It's just people can win games on the side. This was a tournament match. You know, despite the fact that the plot was that Tom wants revenge, he's super pissed off. He's got this killer combo with Demise, Ruin, and Appropriate. It's really a tournament duel. Alright. And Rig Veda's dueling. You know, Rig Veda runs into his old friend Tony Don, but Tony Don is on the side of justice now, and he wants Rig Veda to stop this madness. And so you get like former friends beating the crap out of each other. You get more broken BS cards. This is actually the episode where I highlighted Rig Veda's power as a card creator, because his gimmick was that he worked for Pegasus, he worked for Industrial Illusions, he was a card designer, but the cards that he was designing were like, they were kind of frowned upon because they were using too much energy, they were using too much power. And when he wanted to call forth the Gigas, which are the Dalkar beasts now in Dokailo, when he wanted to call forth the Gigas, Pegasus and everyone was basically just like, no, you can't do this. This energy's too dangerous for mankind to wield. Our solid vision technology is not good enough for this. Like, the card's actually going to materialize and hurt people. That's basically what's going to happen here. And so people turn down his designs, but he's for some reason determined to push his designs. And so he becomes the notorious criminal, the notorious, you know, scientist mastermind that everybody knows him as these days. You know, Richard Adev becomes Rig Veda. And yeah. But as I said, this is kind of where I showed off his power of being a creator. I was such a dirty cheat here. So, Tony uses an Exodia deck in Battlezone. Yu-Gi-Oh! Battlezone, that is. I had him pull the Exodia, but I had Rig invent a card that can respond to Exodia, which, as you know, if you're familiar with the game, cannot be done. This is not anything that you can do. You can't respond to Exodia. Like, the word automatic denotes automatic, okay? It instantly happens. But Rig Veda's a douchebag, and he's a card creator. So he invented a card that flips the Exodia win condition on its back. And so he wins. And he's a prick. Like, everybody, like, that was just a great heel win. It was super cheap. I would not do it in my own card game, like, one bit. You know, it's just, I would not do it in my own card game if I could, like, go back in time and do it again. But it worked great for heel heat, because everybody was like, dude, Rig is scum. Rig is scum, dude. He can't be doing that. Like, this is so mad. So it worked out, but again, I probably wouldn't repeat it. I feel like I would find a better way to do it, or just have him win via skill. It was weird because it's like Rig Veda was like the leader, but he had a bunch of scummy ways early on of winning. He won the Crawler duel clean. He did the Exodia flip on Tony. When we do the reveal of the Gigas in episode 55, Solomon Moto actually has command of one of the gemstones. I had Solomon Moto obtain the gemstone. So, like, when Rig Veda gets kicked out of Industrial Illusions, Pegasus splits up the gemstones between a bunch of people that he knows he can trust with them. So people like Tony Don, people like Solomon Moto, and so on. and Rig Veda and Singer have progressively been going around and robbing people of the gemstones. So the main character and the love interest get a gemstone, you know, because Pegasus saw what they did to stop Reflect and the Monarchy. So, you know, they're plot relevant, basically. I derived the duel directly from Merrick versus Mai in Battle City. So, Solomon Moto has the gemstone, and he has Blueheim's card, the Gigas of Wind, or I'm sorry, the Gigas of Water. It's supposed to be the Gigas of Wind and Water in Skies, but it wasn't in Battle Zones. You know, screw me, I guess. So the Gigas of Water, Blueheim in my story. But Rig knows how to command the Gigas, and Solomon Moto does not. So even though Solomon Moto summons the Gigas successfully, Rig Veda is able to take control of it, and he just uses it to blow Solomon Moto away and turns him to stone. The whole gimmick was that if Rig Veda defeats someone with Arcane, they turn to stone. I guess he was secretly Medusa. I don't really know why I decided to do it this way. And so people are kind of like, man, Rig Veda's like a cheap prick. he's reversing Exodia on people. He's taking control of cards without using a card effect. It's just like he knows how to use the card, so he's just taking it. There's like some outside forces here that are allowing him to do it. And man, so yeah. So when Sherry gets to duel Rig Veda at the end of Season 3, everyone's like, oh no, what the flit is going to happen here? Like, what's Rig's next scheme to screw someone over? And let's switch songs briefly here. Oh man, I'm talking a little too loud. I'm actually like starting to get a sore throat here. Try to bring it back a little because I still have to teach tomorrow. All right. So everybody's like, man, how, you know, there's how... Very, very quiet song. Does it get louder later? I guess it does. All right, well, there you go. Guess we just gotta wait for it. Okay. Turns like, oh no, what's like the cheap gimmick gonna be here? All right, and this is... Sometimes Teamudf gets like too excited for an idea, and I'll just kind of like impulse put things down, and it comes off as goofy later. I'm not entirely convinced this was a horrible idea, but it just seems a little goofy looking back at it. Gimmick for this duel was that the main character gets trapped by Rig Veda, and he's in this like glass container type of thing. Sherry and Rig Veda, the love interest in Rig Veda rather, go out to the bridge and they get ready to duel. And the way that this works is that whenever Rig Veda deals damage to Sherry and she loses life points, the container holding the main character will start to fill with like this searing steam. It's like, it's really hot steam. It will like actually shred the skin. And so Rig Veda is basically using the duel as a sort of torture. And he's basically trying to get Sherry to just surrender the gemstone. You know, you won't hurt your love interest. Just give me the gemstone. Nobody has to suffer here. You know, so again, it's like it's another thing that's kind of coming off as a cheap ploy. And to add to this, the entire time, the main character is shouting, you know, typical things you would expect an anime protagonist to shout, like, don't worry about me, you know, just beat him, end this madness. I love that I'm using the phrase end this madness so much. I'm having fun here tonight. I hope you guys are too. I know I'm talking a lot, and not really interacting, but I don't know, I'm having a good time. That's what the celebration's all about. Anyway, but the way that I set up the glass container, you can't hear the person from the other side. So there's no way that the main character can communicate to their love interest that they should just duel and not let it bother them. So Sherry has to go through this, like, you know, self-introspection, basically, and try to figure out, you know, what's the best play here? Do I just go for it? This could be our chance to defeat Rig Veda once and for all. But, man, every time I'm taking a hit here, you know, like, my freaking love interest is basically, you know, his skin is burning alive over there. You know, it's like, it's not good stuff. I'm not a big fan of this song for this. Let's find another one. Let's do the relative geometry. So what a funky song. So it's like if she loses, this is going to be a drastic setback for the main characters, like the protagonists rather, because they're gonna lose a gemstone. That means that Sherry's gonna turn to stone because Rig Veda's gonna do his cheaty nonsense. And it's like, at the same time, the main character got super hurt as a result of the duel, and so he's not gonna be able to pursue Rig Veda. Rig Veda's basically got him at his mercy. And so, like, I always am curious how people put things together. That's mainly why I ask for a lot of feedback when I go through various ideas. And it's okay if I don't get feedback, but I just think it's a lot more fun and useful if I do. I always am curious about things like this particular duel. When people were reading it, did people pick up on all those things that I just mentioned? Did they pick up on the fact that the heroes would just be completely blown out and hung up to dry if Sherry loses this match? Like, did they put that together? Did they put together the consequences of Sherry actually losing this duel? And did it cause them to change their mind and suspect that she was going to win instead? Like, if you try to balance all these things in your head, does it kind of end up looking like it's too much of a setback to the heroes? I don't know if I'm illustrating that clearly enough, but I think about these sorts of things. And so it's like, you know, because I'm into the whole unpredictability of the duel thing. Because Yu-Gi-Oh! Does not have unpredictable duels. Yu-Gi-Oh! Has very predictable duels. So is there a way that I can sway this so that maybe they get convinced that she wins? And then she does. She does win. Sherry defeats Rig Veda. This is the Shun beats Crow scenario. I actually pulled the trigger on this. I had Rig Veda lose. So, Rig's gemstone goes careening off the bridge, and he dives after it. This bridge, if you can picture it, imagine a sort of GoldenEye cradle. That's how I had Rig Veda's base set up, but it was actually in a jungle setting. It wasn't super suspended in the air. It was kind of closer to the movie adaptation, where it was suspended, but it was between a bunch of brush. It was between a bunch of forests and things. But the drop is still very far, and the drop is into, like, swirling waterfalls. Rig Veda's been after these gemstones for the whole season. He hasn't let up on them. And so when his flies off the ledge, or maybe Sherry chucked hers, I don't remember which it was. Sherry might have just been fed up and is like, take this stupid thing, I don't want it anymore. Rig's like, no, I need that. He jumps in after it. And so this kind of came off to everybody as like, dude, that guy just like legit jumped to his death. Yeah. Here, for the visual aid, this is pretty close. I would maybe say raise the trees. I would say raise the trees and we've got a deal. And then run waterfalls along the side here. So Rainstorm helped me out here. He found a shot of the cradle from the GoldenEye movie. Yeah, raise the trees, and I think you got yourself a deal here. So like this is not a joking distance here. This is not a short distance by any means. He jumped from here to like down here to chase his gemstone, and he landed in swirling waters. Okay. So like, yeah, that's not good if you're Rig Veda. And so everyone's like, man, you know, Sherry got a plot-relevant win. And it kind of made me feel good. It's like I could have just had the main character face Rig Veda there, and I could have had the main character foil Rig Veda. And, you know, we do our whole, okay, now on to the next plot or whatever. But I don't know, it felt good to give someone else a win. it felt good to make another character matter. And so again, to like iterate, the whole point of the story is season 3 is where I basically decided multiple characters need the spotlight. This isn't a one-person show. And so when I write my card games and I think about things like Dokailo or any of the other iterations of card games that I've come up with, it's always in the back of my head that when I write the story, it's not that there's always going to be multiple main characters, but it should feel like anybody can do anything at any given time. And there are maybe some limits that can be pulled. Like, there are certain characters that you reasonably wouldn't expect to defeat someone like Singer, or Jay, or Zin, or Kajido. You know, there's a certain echelon of duelists that you don't expect other certain duelists to be able to surpass. You don't think Scampedy's gonna win many duels? Yeah, stuff like that. Like, there's just certain characters that you can look at and it's like, some of their fates are sealed. But if the majority of them aren't, I can spin the yarn a little bit more without having to resort to just silly twists and, you know, upping the ante and things like that, which I do have a tendency to do. I've done it many times in the past. So that was the end of season 3. They get through, they have a creepy dream that was supposed to be a hint that the third face is going to return. Deffer's going to come back. And then Jay returns with a souped up deck. So, you know, we go into like the tournament mode and everything. This is kind of where I'm going to stop giving spoilers very specifically, because these are some of the things that I might repeat in Dokailo. So a lot of the things that I gave away here tonight are probably things that don't make it to my own card game story. Some of them might, but I don't know. There's not a whole lot that's there that I'd be interested in. There are a couple things that are high on the list, but So yeah, season 4 is rolling. It's the Tokyo Tour finals. We've got the final 8. People are just waiting for the Singer stuff. I've been building Pi up. You know, Pi is like... Pi, you know, the main character's like best friend in this story. You know, kind of Ethan's best friend in all the iterations of the Dokailo Battle Zone. Okay. He's been around since the beginning. You know, episode 1. He's there. He exists. He's giving you lore. He's giving you history. He's feeding strategies into the main characters. He's feeding strategies into the protagonist in general, just trying to help out, do everything he can. Season 1 passes. Season 2 passes. Season 3 passes. Pi has not dueled. Pi has had 0 duels. He's been there from the very beginning. Nobody knows what he can do. He shows up in the final 8 of the Tokyo Tour. Nobody knows how he got there. There's no on-screen evidence that he won those 6 duels. So there's a lot of stuff going into this tournament. Jay, James, and Singer are making this rivalry triangle. Pi is a complete unknown. Everybody knows he has the knowledge, but there's no hint of what this guy is running. There's no hint of his cards whatsoever. You have a couple throwaway duelists you don't expect to do much, and then you have the main character and his love interest. So there's a lot of things here. There's a lot of unknowns. It's not very obvious what's going to happen. And so the first thing I did was I turned the whole tournament upside down. I completely screwed with the readers in the first match. It was there. This is one of the spoilers that I can't give away, but I mean, you could reasonably look it up, but I'm not going to do that job for you, basically. So I'm giving people the chance who want to remain spoiler-free to remain spoiler-free. But I completely turned this tournament upside down on the first match. I completely screwed with everybody. And then I did it again in the second match. Third match is very typical. Fourth match is very typical. Then the semifinals. Semifinals are filled to the brim with dream matches. And so eventually, I mean, I'm not going to say which match was which, you know, which was the match that turned things upside down, which were the typical matches. But yeah, finally, eventually, Singer and Jay stand tall. You know, these were the two characters who I wanted to have to fight for the Ultimate Championship at some point. You know, there's world-ending shenanigans going on with these Gigas. There's world-ending shenanigans with the Gemstones. You know, Singer has not been defeated for the plot. Sai was defeated, but he's still around. You know, so Rig Veda's proteges are still around, causing trouble, basically. And nobody can even touch Singer because he's like a legit competitor in the tournament. And he hasn't technically done anything illegal that anyone can find. So, like, nobody's just gonna come arrest this guy. He's just associated with Rig Veda. Like, that's it. He's got the power of the DS2 system. He's not getting caught. It's a real dueling system with real damage, basically. And so with those things combined, I felt confident that he could compete in this tournament without, you know, people just asking, why isn't this guy getting arrested or whatever. It's not perfect, but like I said, it just gave me the confidence that I could do it. And so this is where I came up with some of like my iconic cards, like Silent Mystic, which was the heart fusion of Silent Swordsman and Mystic Swordsman. You know, a lot of good things came out of this era here. This is where the SD Cyber cards came out to play. Pi's Renaissance deck came out, and just everybody loved it to death. So I guess making this guy wait to duel for so long really paid off. I don't know if I'll pull the same gimmick in Dokailo. Like, I don't know if I'll make you wait as long, but I also suspect the episodes go by faster, so maybe relatively speaking it's the same. Who knows? But yeah, I'm in no rush. Pi is going to have a similar gimmick, but yeah, it's just, he impressed everybody. Singer, this is where I just kicked Singer into overdrive. I'm like, all right, we're gonna really hammer in. So at this point, it's like 2007. It's August 2007, September 2007. So we've been going for like almost a whole year at this point. And now I'm actively going after the wrestling stuff. I'm like, okay, we need to build this Jay Singer duel, because what a lot of people had trouble with in this tournament was predictions, because it was looking like Singer just had to go down at some point, because the whole side of his bracket is just filled with protagonists. It's just James and Sherry are both on his side of the bracket. And so it's like, how can Singer just really clear out a bunch of the main characters? Like, this doesn't seem like it's going to work. And meanwhile, Jay, you know, he's got the main character on the side of his bracket, and there's some other plot relevant things going on there too. So it's like, people are just, it's not looking good for the dream match. So people are spending the first half of this season basically hoping that the dream match is not dead. And they're weaseling around it. They're like, man, you know, I really want so-and-so to win, but they're fighting so-and-so number 2. And it doesn't seem likely that they're gonna win. And so I'm able to do, like, very obvious results. To me, they're obvious because I'm pushing for Singer versus Jay. And so to get to Singer versus Jay, I do want that sense of aura that they had, that sense of domination. I want that to just flourish. I want that to remain a constant. But the only way I can pull that off in my own head is if they're still winning. And so it's very obvious to me that they can win, and just, it's okay. But it was fun because it wasn't obvious to the readers. They were actually convinced that because it's a tournament, because it's a Yu-Gi-Oh story, it's a card game story, there's plot relevance with the gemstones being in the tournament, the protagonist must win. And these two ideas conflict with one another. They contradict one another because it's like, man, I want this dream match, but I might have to admit that I can't have it. And so it felt a little more rewarding to the community when I ultimately revealed through Singer and Jay winning that they were going to get their dream match. They ran into each other, maybe late 20s, early 30s. We're sitting here at like episode 73, and this duel still hasn't happened. So like by now, people are convinced that I'm going for episode 100, and I'm like, I'm gonna end the series on episode 100 probably, and it's like, it's probably gonna end with Singer and Jay. Like they're starting to come up with all sorts of theories and things, and I'm just eating it up because it's like, I know the result, but at the same time of knowing the result, people giving feedback can sometimes tip me off to things that would work better. Like I brought up the thing with the Singer duel against the protagonist the second time, and I was going to book him to lose against the protagonist the third time. That duel never happened after I read the feedback to the second duel, because I'm just like, it doesn't seem like it's a good idea to have the main character go over Singer here. I don't think this is going to work. And so I ran similar logic here. I'm like, I don't feel like Jay versus Singer has the same flair to it if either one of them loses. So if I'm going to pull this match off the way that I want to do it, maybe neither one of them should lose. And so I give people what they want, and it's very predictable, but it works. People are happy to see the predictability here because it's leading towards something that they want. As opposed to when Yu-Gi-Oh! Like Vrains or something, you know, Yusaku winning is probably not leading us to anything that we want. So it's like, we could have afforded to see him lose here and there. We could have afforded to see Jaden lose here and there. We could have afforded to see Yusei lose at all. Like, for the love of... Why did Yusei never lose in this freaking series? He lost to Jack in a flashback, and his duel against Kiryu got canceled. Like, that doesn't count. I wanted to see that man's life points hit 0 at some point in the series. In a live duel. Not in a goofy flashback, and not, oh, Earthbound Immortal would have probably finished him off. His trap card didn't work, and his monster couldn't attack. He probably would have lost. I want to see it. I want to see it. Seeing is believing. And so I think that there's a lot of merit in that. I think that sometimes you can go for the predictability if just... You gotta write it correctly, though. That's really all I'm saying. And I'm not saying I have the perfect example of this. I'm sure it's been done much better than what I managed to pull off here. Because I wasn't thinking as deeply back then as I was now. A lot of this is hindsight. But at the time, I'm basically just like, Singer and Jay are going to be undefeated. That's like the end of it. You know, that's like my pitch for the wrestling story, basically. And so, I do the thing where the tournament gets postponed. We've got plot to take care of. And on the 1-year anniversary of Battlezone, so like September 17, 2007, I threw in the main character versus Rig Veda duel. There it was. Everybody thought that there was going to be like a flashback episode or some kind of recap or a filler or some comedy skit or something. No, I went into main character versus Rig Veda on the 1-year anniversary. And so this was where a great gimmick was established. This Rig Veda. So I always pointed out the fact that he had a jetpack. Rig Veda travels via jetpack because he's freaking Rig Veda and he doesn't need an excuse otherwise. And for some reason, I don't know how, for some reason, when he jumped off the bridge to go get the gemstone after the duel with the love interest, only one person questioned why didn't he use his jetpack. Nobody else questioned it. They all just assumed that Rig jumped to his death. It's just, he was so possessed over this gemstone that he just leapt and died, or he's hurt or something. one person, one single person questioned why didn't he use the jetpack? And it turns out he did. And so that person with like that event, it just kind of turned into a running gimmick throughout Battlezone that Rig Veda would be foiled in some way eventually. He had a lot of one-ups on people. Rig Veda has 2 losses in all of Battlezone. I don't know if he'll have the same number in Dokylo, but Rig Veda had 2 losses in all of Battlezone. And so it's like, every time he would get foiled or something otherwise, he would like fall off of a cliff, or he'd fall off his base, or something. And every single time he would disappear for several episodes, and everyone would be in anticipation. They'd be like, please, did he use the jetpack? And every single time he came back with the jetpack, everyone's like, ah, there it is, you know? It's like, it was so much fun to just do over and over again. I only did it like 4 times. I'm making it seem like I did it a bunch. I did it like 4 times. And 3 times after the initial like meme or gimmick was established or whatever. But it was just kind of like, this is so much fun, because it's like, you could have Rig Veda put on a great performance, and he looks like he's beaten everything. It looks like this is finally going to be the thing that beats him. And he just like flies off with his jetpack or whatever. It's like, oh, well, crap. Right, he had that stupid jetpack. We can't chase him down. We can't fly, basically. Darn this jetpack. Like, every time this jetpack shows up, something notorious is going down. Oh, man. Yes, I was into Magic. Not nearly as much as Yu-Gi-Oh, though. Yu-Gi-Oh influences my card game stuff way more than Magic, although I will always go on record saying that Magic is the better designed game. Oh man, this freaking jetpack, dude. It's like, it was just so much fun to play with. Yeah, Rig Veda and the main character have their duel. Insert spoilers here. Rig Veda has to disappear for a while because all the good stuff is going down, and he comes back with the jetpack. And then we got the Singer versus Jay match. I finally delivered on episode 78. I even called it Explosive Main Event. And it was a 3-part epic that I took my time with it. I wrote out the whole thing. This might be one of the reasons why I write out the entire outline for the duel. Because I mostly would do like the duels in my head back then. I would sometimes boot up YVD, or I would have a notepad nearby with, to remind me what the character's hand was or something. But it was around this particular duel that I started writing out move by move what I wanted each person to do, because this was the duel that was worth it. And this is where I could tell that like some of my readers were not paying attention to the plot so much, because several people thought that it was just going to end after Singer versus Jay. Like, even though there was indeterminate things going on involving the gemstones, the villain had not been defeated, like, at all, when this duel was going on. This duel just takes place in the middle of everything going straight down the tube. People still thought this was, like, the end of the series. They're like, oh man, we've got Singer versus Jay, this must be it. So it was, like, really funny, because it's like, darn, now I kind of know who's not, like, really paying attention to the plot or something. There's still a whole bunch of unresolved things, but yeah. Oh, man. So, I don't know, I guess the point of just messing around with some of these stories and everything, and I'm not nearly finished, but like I said, the further I go into Battlezone, the more dangerous the spoilers get, and there are some things later on that I still really want to use. There's one thing in particular that I would never talk about on my own. Ever. Ever. There's one twist within Battlezone that I have never spoken about to anyone who's never read it. I absolutely refuse. I refuse. This is like a twist that needs to be experienced. I will not give myself permission to spoil it in any discussion with anybody who has not already seen it. Because it took the whole series to build up to. The whole series. And so that's just like, I respect the twist itself, basically. I will always remember it fondly. It will always be one of my favorite things that I've ever done in any written story ever, for anything, for any reason. And so, as a result of that, I will never utter that twist. It's in there. The people who experienced it had a great time. It was a painfully good time, because after that twist was revealed, it's like suddenly the whole scope of the story is completely in place. But at the same time, the twist is just so painful that you can't help but wish that in universe it didn't happen. Like, it's a horrible thing to have happened in universe. But the actual construction of the twist itself was a phenomenal experiment. It was wonderful. I don't know. I really hope that I can get far enough into Dokailo so I can have another generation of readers experience it. And maybe I'm talking it up too much. Maybe I'm hyping it too much as the creator. And so, maybe when you'd see it, you'd be like, this is it? This was the big twist. But back then, it was the thing. So there were two things that happened around that time. I won't say either one of them, but to just kind of give you a scope of how much this affected people reading the story. After I presented these twists to them, people were spending like 10 posts in other people's stories talking about the twist in Battlezone. Battlezone had its own thread. They could talk about it in there, but somehow conversations about these twists were getting started in other people's stories, and people would just talk about them over and over and over. These things were ridiculous in scope. And I had never seen that before, and I have never seen it again since. I have never pulled it off a second time. That I had them, like, basically infecting other people's story threads so that they could talk about what happened in Battlezone. Never again did I make that happen. And so that was, like, one of my contact highs of writing, is that it was just like, wow, I didn't even know this was a possibility. I had no idea this was a possibility. Ew, that's a terrible suggestion, Rainstorm. Jay is Singer's son. Ew. Boo. Boo. Okay. I got you. But yeah. And this happened several times. And it's just like, I don't want to give away too much because I don't want you to mistakenly see something, but I just let me go to like a couple of the threads here. There's not a way I can, like, cover up certain things on the screen, isn't it? Okay. Here. What I'm going to do... Okay, I think that's the one... Okay, so you guys know about that one. The one that Rainstorm just said. Okay. You guys know about that one. Alright, so maybe I don't have to hide that. Did I... Man, I don't remember. I don't remember how many of the things I spoiled on stream for you guys. Let me grab, like, just a small little... It's just, like, any window to cover it up. Okay, hang on. Let me make sure this doesn't have any spoilers. Oh, wait a minute. This is a bad idea. I can't cover it up because I'm about to do a, Okay, hang on. I have to do a monitor capture for this. Sorry to be taking up time. Okay, I'm just gonna use like a calculator app or something to block it. Okay. Because, like, there's also certain things that you get for free out of reading Battlecrest, but I don't want to, like, assume who has seen what, basically. So for, like, the people who are actually invested into Dokailo, then yeah. Alright, so yeah, it was like... I would get reactions that look like this. So it's like, you know, just people spazzing out completely. Because, like, I hid things in plain sight, but nobody, you know, like, nobody saw them coming. Okay, so many good times here. There's similar reactions from the same thread. Let me see if I can get another one. I need a second calculator here. I'm like trying to scan so I make sure that I don't spoil the... Okay. Yeah, like people would just flip out. People would just completely flip out. And it was so much fun to see that as the creator. Like to see that people were enjoying things this much. I think this is why I get so hung up on wanting to write for people other than just me, is because I really want people to be able to experience this type of thing again. I want people to just have fun with something. I want to share something that is just a good time for all. And it might be things that we don't look at as perfection. I mean, Battlezone certainly had its fair share of bad things. There's 3 twists in particular from Battlezone that if I could go back, I would not have done them again. I would not have done 3 twists from Battlezone again. But yeah, the big one. Oh man, let me get the big one. The one where just... it didn't end. Here it is. Let me zoom in here. God dang it, I hate when I zoom in that it like scrolls up a ton. Okay. Zoom out a little bit. Okay. Alright, where are the spoilers that I need to cover up here? Are there like little... are there like little post-its or something that I can just throw up some... man, I don't have like... I don't have sticky notes or anything though, because like the calculator app is just sometimes too big and I don't want to mess with my notepad screen sizes or anything. Alright, whatever. I'll just deal with it. What do I cover up here? There's this that can get covered up. Oh shoot, I have a flaw with my... alright. With my screen positioning here. God dang it. Alright. This is like the most ghetto setup that I'm just covering spoilers with calculator apps. Like, Jesus. Alright. Alright. Like, just seeing how things impact people. just seeing how things like this impact people, dude. I mean, it's just... I don't know. I don't know what to say. I think it speaks for itself. Like, when the reader and the writer come together to have this type of shared experience, it feels so good. Like, this guy, this arty person who left this comment, he still messages me to this day. This is like one of the 2 Pojo people that I still know from back then. And he still has memories of these fan fictions that we wrote together. And he still has memories of all the things that we've read. And it's just... yeah, I don't know. It's... I can't get enough of it. I can't get enough of it. So basically what happened here is I pulled a false finish to the entire series. Everyone was pretty convinced that the entire series was going to end at this certain point. And long story short, it didn't. It didn't end at this point at all. And people were completely flabbergasted. They had no idea what to think here. Like, this is the rant of someone who could, like, they could barely put together their words. I mean, you see, like, his perspective here, like, we're back at the beginning, you know? He saw this as, like, a hard reset to the whole series because of what I pulled off in this episode. That was the impact that this episode had on everybody. This is like the longest Battlezone thread. It goes on for like 3 straight pages. I think there's a bunch. Actually, I don't know if it's the longest relevant thread though, because I do recall there being quite a bit of spam on this particular thread. But yeah, I pulled a false finish basically on the series, and so people were just completely blown away. They couldn't believe it. I don't know if there are any other good examples I can give, but just, yeah, some of these things are just, they're such positive memories for me. And they drive me and they motivate me to do something as ridiculous as the scope of Dokailo, as just like any story now. Like, I would love to sit here and say, I'm just gonna work on a card game until I get it to be completely perfect, but there is a chance that I don't. There is a chance that just someday I say, man, I've tried this card game stuff for too long and it's just not working out, let's move on. You know, but the desire to re-experience those things and to have fun with readers again, to interact with more people, to see all the theories that people are coming up with, you know, are some of the fan theories better than my theories even? Because I've changed my stories before based on what people have thought. I like to respond to the audience. That's a thing that I enjoy. I basically exist in this capacity to write for a crowd. And I think that just explains a lot of aspects of me that people don't see very often. Because again, most of the time I'm just sitting around here casually playing games. You don't see a whole lot of this deep type of thought process. It could come out on occasion because I'm a freaking math professor. So it's like, you know, I have to be able to at least have some critical thinking to pull all these things off. But you just don't get to see it that often because I'm like mindlessly playing games. And so I get bored sometimes. And when I get bored, I just start inventing little stories in my head. I start messing with things so that I can get the scenario that will be more interesting. I have completely thrown myself under the bus in the past. Not a lot of you would even get this. But I have thrown myself under the bus in the past several times just because I think it's more interesting to present it that way. Like, it's just... I just want to tell the good story, basically. There's a couple times where I've been really bad at acting it out, though. I think there's a couple times when people realized I really knew more than what I was letting on. There's at least a couple scenarios I can think of in my head where I don't think I sold properly. I don't think it was, I don't think I hid well enough that I actually knew what was happening. You know, but it's like, if I get bored, I make a story out of it. It doesn't matter if the story's real life or a card game or whatever, I'm here to write stories. I don't know. I don't feel bad admitting that. Just sometimes I think that certain things are more interesting than other things. There's a pretty decent chance, though, that there's certain things you can figure it out on. Like, you can... As much as I like kind of being the wild card and doing whatever I want, I do unfortunately still fall into certain formulas. You can figure it out based on like my reaction to screwing things up. You know, it's like, did it really seem like I'm upset that I screwed this thing up? You can dig deep. I don't know. Maybe that'll confirm a couple situations for some of you, but it's just like, I am so addicted to the idea of sharing good stories with people. And that's why it bums me out when I see that I'm taking so long to produce something like Dokailo. That's really why it hurts so much to think about that it's almost been 3 years since I've started investing a bunch of time into this. Because it's like, man, where could I have been by now if I would have been able to spend these 3 years making progress? How far along could I have been? Maybe I could have already been done with Battlezone again. Who knows? I don't expect Battlezone to be nearly as long as it once was in Yu-Gi-Oh form. It's just, like I said, there's filler. There's things that don't need to be there, like descriptors. There's little key phrases that I think can go and everything. But this is seriously a consideration that I have. And it drives me crazy because I see what I did in 3 years before, and here I am now 3 years after the Battle Crest presentation, and I'm just not seeing the output. And that's really what disappoints me overall, I feel like. It's a situation where I'm forced to look at it and say, I did this before, why can't I do it again? And there's outside factors. I'm not 100% blaming outside factors. I'm not 100% blaming myself. I would love to be able to sit down and write several hours a day if I could, but some days I just can't. Some days are completely taken up for me, or I get home and I'm so wiped out that I have to take a nap, and by the time I get up, it's stream time. I mean, it happens. And by the time stream time is over, then I have to plan for class. And when planning for class is over, because my students come first on a work day. My students absolutely come first on a work day. And then when I'm done planning classes, it's time for bed because I have to wake up at 6 a.m. So yeah, I don't know. So like, I don't know. Like I said, this video, if I even bother to upload it to YouTube, or at least, you know, those of you listening in chat, and I know I haven't interacted with you too much today, but I really just wanted to enjoy myself and talk here. I really just wanted to put all the bad feelings behind me and basically just say, screw it. Let's just have fun. What was about this that I enjoyed? What was it? You know, what really drove me here to write 200 freaking episodes of Yu-Gi-Oh! Fan fiction that went on for, gosh, let me get the spreadsheet, everybody. Let me get this data for you, for those of you who have not heard these numbers, because this is just silly. There's no excuse for why I did this. So why was I motivated? Why was I driven to write 3,586 pages worth of material that totals to 1,494,367 words? Close to 1.5 million words. And that's just Battlezone. That doesn't count Zero Freeze. That doesn't count Destiny's Horizon. That doesn't count the little goofy sub-series I wrote between Destiny's Horizon and Second Air. That doesn't count all my drafts. That's a lot of freaking words. That's a lot of freaking words. And it blows my mind that I even did it back then. 1 million words these days seems like it's gonna take an eternity. But somehow I just spat out 1.5 million words in 3 years back then. And like I said, I'm not trying to, you know, overestimate myself here. I realize that a lot of those words are filler. Okay, it's not going to be most of them, but it's going to be a lot of them. It's going to be a good chunk of them. Okay, a lot of those words are filler. It's not like the word count that makes the writer. It's not the word count that makes the story. But it's just like, holy Flid, that was a lot of stuff. That was a lot of stuff. Take a look at the spreadsheet. Here, I'll put it on screen for a bit. Take a look at the spreadsheet. Look at the average length of these chapters. Sometimes I would purposely make them end on a perfect 10,000 or something. If I open turn 115 right now, Word will tell me there's exactly 10,000 words in it. I was just messing around and screwing around and stuff. But look at the average size of these chapters. These are all episodes. These are all chapters. And then I start getting to the bigger ones down here, the ones that really start to matter, and I hit like 11,585 for one episode. You know what one episode was for Dokailo when I was, you know, the few episodes that I've made? It was about here. It was about like 4,800. This was it. As you can see, this is how this was measured and everything. Yeah, there it was. There it was. So it's like, there's no way I need this much space to do an episode these days. Absolutely not. I'm consolidating a lot of my dueling descriptions. I'm consolidating a lot of the filler phrases. I barely have filler phrases. Like, there are some that sneak through, but there's nothing goofy like a trio of humans walks by a door, you know? Like, who the Flid needs to care that they're humans? You know they're humans. You've experienced them for like the past however many episodes. I don't need to tell you they're humans. But yeah. So this is something that I'm vastly interested in doing. This is something that I really want to do. It's something that I really want to push through and try to accomplish. And I'm gonna be, I don't know. I know it's dangerous to play the what if games, but it'll suck if I can't do it. It'll suck if I can't do it because it was just so much blasted fun, dude. It was so good. It was so good, and if I could find some way to make it work, I would just consistently do it over and over and over and over and over and over and over. And so, really, what I think is the key to this is that I have to just escape the notion that it's more formal. I just have to go away from the fact that it's going to be formal. I had zero problem churning these things out when they were fan fiction because no publisher, no website, no blog, you know, it was just a bunch of stupid random posts on a card game forum. It's like, this doesn't affect anybody's life whatsoever. But it's just because this thing that I'm doing is a commercial project. It's a custom made from the ground up project using references and characters and ideas from the past. But it has to be designed in a way that it doesn't infringe copyright because it's its own thing. It stands on its own. That just drives the psychology through the roof. And it makes it impossible for me to focus on the writing itself. And so I need a way to overcome that. I need a way to return. So like when I say I want to return to the days of Battlezone and Destiny's Horizon, I don't mean I want to go back to like, you know, the writing style or anything. I'm talking about I want to go back to the mood. I want to figure out what mode will get me back into this setting that I can just sit down and write the chapter and not worry about all the little goofy nuances that writers have to worry about when they're sending into a publisher. Because I'm not sending into a publisher, and you can't make me send into a publisher. This is something that I'm going to be posting on blogs some places, and we can try to figure out ways to advertise it. And I want to bring in new readers. I want some kind of audience for this thing. I've got a Patreon that we've made for it that I would like to run someday as a more formal thing. The Patreon can be formal, but the story should be fun. The story should be exciting, but the story should still be readable, and it should be engaging. Those are the main two things I would like to get out of writing this thing. I want it to be readable, and I want it to be engaging. If I can get myself to believe in the power of those two things, and if I can get out of this rut and this self-doubt and all these other goofy, nonsensical things, like my lack of time, my lack of motivation, my lack of being awake, if I can push past all of that, I really think it'll just erupt and I can create the magic again. I have seen no reason to believe that I can't create the magic again. I just need to find the circumstances which let me do it. You know, and because I'm so tired of falling into these stupid patterns that's like a writer has to do this, a writer has to do that, a writer has to do that. And by whose system does a writer have to do that? And you kind of come full circle to another discussion we've had on this channel fairly often lately. This is a human-designed system. The system is designed by humans for certain humans, not for all humans. To break out of the system is not a bad thing, and I think people are really forgetting this. This is why I behave the way that I do most of the time, is because staying within the system is a silly idea. People are afraid to leave the system because they fear change. You can challenge the system and be perfectly okay. And this isn't a rant, this isn't a speech, this isn't gossip about an uprising or anything. This is saying if you really, really feel that something should be a certain way, you should make it that way. And all I need to do is be able to sit down and think about it like that. And I think we're gonna have some fun. I need to be able to throw away for an extended period of time the idea that I need to conform to some bogus system. Because it makes people feel good on the inside, that they can control the way that people present their work. It makes people feel important that they can do this. I don't care about feeling important. I care about having fun. I care about having a good time. And you should too. And so that's what I want. Okay. And so there's all these small little psychological factors that can go into this. I can wake up and have like back pain or something. I don't have back pain, but just as an example. Okay, I could wake up and have back pain that just throws off my mood for the whole day. I do have the pelvic tilt thing. I can wake up and that's been flaring up the past day or two. So it's like I'm so focused on that pelvic tilt pain that I just can't sit down and focus on the writing. It's just impossible. I can't put myself into the story with the characters and imagine how do I really want them to react in this situation. So it's like there's a bunch of these goofy outside factors I'm trying to mitigate. I'm trying to get rid of them as much as I can. And it's a difficult process to try to get rid of all those outside factors. There's a lot of them. There are people who completely will believe, no matter what you tell them, that there is one way to do something. And that is the way that it must be done. And I will tell you that they're wrong. They're wrong. No, that's wrong. I'll raise the Danganronpa flag. You can figure out a workaround. Workarounds exist. That's like the whole basis of playing with mathematics and stuff. It all fits together. But man, there's just some things you can't control. I can't control when I wake up and feel like crap, and I don't know what it is. I don't think it's depression. I don't feel like I have depression. I think I can sense all my sadnesses in life. I think I understand the source of all the sadnesses I have in life right now. That's not the work of depression. I don't believe it. Okay. So there's some other things that I just have to get by. You know, maybe I'm just a naturally moody person. Okay. Maybe I just have to get into the exact right stage. I gotta like twist it and turn it until it fits perfectly in the keyhole. Who knows? Maybe I just had it back then and I don't have it anymore. Maybe I'll just find out that I don't want to write at all. Maybe I've been forcing myself to write this whole time. Who knows? Maybe I need a different outlet for telling stories. Maybe there's just so many nuances in the writing process that I can't see it as just a fun exercise anymore. Maybe I've actually lost that ability. I don't know. So that's why I keep tackling it 3 years later. 3 years, everybody. This time in 2016, we looked at the first episode of Yu-Gi-Oh! Battle Crest. I was like, all right, one last hurrah. I played the video for everybody as we got into stream today. I said, one last hurrah. Let's do one more Yu-Gi-Oh! Story before I fully just engulf myself in my own card game. Let's do it. One more for the road. And I liked it, and I gave it a crappy ending. It was a garbage ending. It just kind of ends. But you know what? I did it. I finished that season. And now I can do season 2 of Battle Crest with my own game. And eventually I could make it canon, and I could go back and redo season 1 with my own game. It's all possible. It's all there. But there's what ifs that I have to solve. I have to solve them for my mental state. These things have to come through. They have to come through for me, otherwise I'm wasting my time. Otherwise, there's some other things that I can do. People invested so much time. They invested so much time and effort into reading my stories back in the day. And I feel like I owed them all. I owed it to all of them to produce a story that would be worth their time. And I did it once. And I can do it again. But what capacity, what state does that story take? And that's kind of where I am right now. I'm just going for it. I'm writing duels. I'm coming up with cards. I've got character designs. Gina's done a phenomenal job with art. Kate's been a big supporter of just trying to get me to focus on the positive. Like, some of you, Rainstorm in particular, you give general feedback on the card game itself. Arkea's willing to play around with the coding side of things. Some of you you try to talk and help and engage even though you're not really sure what's going on. It's a card game. It's confusing to you. You don't really follow card games. You know, so the support system is there. I don't feel like, you know, I don't know. I feel like sometimes I come off as though I feel like I'm unsupported. And then I kind of just think about it, like in a brief reflection moment such as now, and I realize there really is no lack of support system. I'm not able to make things happen. I'm not producing things right now. But I've shown in the past that I'm not just an idea person. I'm a doer. I can do things. I act. I produce results. And so it's just a matter of we have to get back there. We have to find what made it work last time. And I think that if I can just get all those weird little quirky doubts out of there, I think it's super doable. I just have to be able to look at the project as a fun project again. And once I figure that out, that's the game. That's game, set, match. It's over. And so we'll remind you of, this is the manga page. You know, someone invented a manga page for Battlezone. You know, for one particular scene later in the series where Infinity is basically trying to go back in time to just absorb the quintessence stone that crashed on Earth, which sets off the whole plot. And, you know, so I believe this person was South American. Zara drew this for me way back in the day. So I guess when Silzel here, what Beyond the Silver, what was he called? Transcendent of the Silver Beyond or something like that. So he drew this monster card just piercing Infinity for me, basically. Get a nice little action shot there. Yeah. This is the, yeah. So it's like, I think about these things and I just think, man, we could have gone for a manga now. We could have gone for a comic. We could have gone for a VN. Maybe I still should. Who knows? Maybe like part of the problem is that I'm relegating myself to the same form of media that I've always been with, and maybe it's just the fact that I've burnt out on writing typically. Who knows? I hope to get that answered soon. That would be nice if I could answer that soon so I can figure out where to go from here. You know, so other people can figure out where we're going from here. I'm sure I've absolutely confused the ever-living daylights out of most of you with this project. Because there's no way of telling where it's going next. I still experiment, I still play around because that's just naturally what I do. I see something and I play with it. New toy, play with it. What does this do? What does that do? Does this get me the result I want? Could I do without this? It's a lot of playing around, but there you go, everybody. There you go. I think it's all been worth it. I think the experimentations, I think the failures, I think the good times, the bad times, I think they've all been worth it. They're all coming together in one gigantic cloud, and they're forming another part of the Teamudf character. But hey, this has been the 10-year celebration of the end of Battlezone. I'm sure we could find more to say. I'm sure we could find more to do, but I want to make sure that I get off to plan for my classes. Went a little longer than I anticipated, but, you know, it happens. We get into these discussing moods, and I like them. This is like the point of things like nonstop discussion. This is the point of episodes like this where I just sit here and I just talk and I yell and I ramble and I try to collect some thoughts and everything, and maybe you try to collect some thoughts too, and maybe you just sit there and work on stuff on the side. Maybe I'm background noise. There's a gigantic variety out there. There is no consistency to life, everybody. You'll never find it. You'll never find it, ever. Stop looking. Stop looking for the consistency and start enjoying the chaos. Start enjoying molding the chaos to your own whim. Because that's what I do. And it's worked out pretty darn well for me. Is it perfect all the time? Absolutely not. It brings some really painful moments mentally. Like, you can you could ask like half of the people in chat right now, Rainstorm, Kate, Gina, they've all seen it. They've all seen me on the verge of quitting and being like, this is dumb. Why am I doing this? Why am I wasting 3 years of my life trying to plan a card game series that probably won't even launch for a card game that probably won't even exist? There's no, it's really easy. It's really easy, apparently. All I had to do was just sit here and play with it for 3 years, and here we are 3 years later. So am I mad that I'm not as far as I want to be? You better believe it. You better believe it. I would be lying to myself if I said I wasn't. But at the same time, I have to be fair. I have to say it was a good experience. I have to say it was all a good experience. And so to kind of raise the flag one more time here for Battlezone, just a project that changed my life, basically. A project that just flew me in a creative direction that I don't think anything else would have in such a large capacity. I have to salute it for everything that it did, for all the people that allowed me to meet, for all the chain butterfly effects that probably occurred after it, that sat me down right here on this desk on September 17th, 2019, 10 years later, and still I believe in the power of telling stories where card games are the main form of battling. I'm going to end it off here, and we send you away into the next one. So, YouTube, if I bothered to upload this, I don't know how you sat through it, but you did it. Twitch, we got more to come, but you know what? We're ending this recording here. So, thanks to everybody for listening, and we will see you for more Team UDF Gaming. Yeah, boy.